Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard Tactics video. Today we will be continuing our basic tactics series, taking a look at the heavy weapons available to the Imperial Guard. If you're new to the basic tactics series, basically what I do is I go through, I did it in 7th edition, I'm doing it in 8th edition, is I go through the different weapons that are available to the Imperial Guard, specifically ones available on infantry units, and I cover them pretty in depth. I go through what they cost, what they can do, where they're best used in your army, and sort of advantages and disadvantages, and whether they're any good or not, basically. And the point of the video is to give newer players, both ones that are new to 40k as a whole, and those who might be experienced but have only just got into the Imperial Guard, a proper idea of what they can expect their weapons to do. Imperial Guard has quite an old model range, which means we have lots of different options available to us, and it can be quite daunting. You know, you've got 5 special weapon options available, you've got 5 heavy weapon options available to you. A lot of them are unique. Autocannons are pretty unique on infantry models, grenade launchers, mortars, and it can be quite difficult to know what to take in where and where to put it. So that's the point of the series, is to give people an idea of whether something's decent or not. Basically, that's why we call it, even though there's a lot of detail, that's why we call it a basic tactics series, because just to give you a basic handle covering the fundamentals of Imperial Guard infantry weapon options. So, there's the last of my knockoff Vimto gone. Let's get into the video. So, today we will be looking at the Autocannon. Now, the Autocannon is an absolutely iconic Imperial Guard weapon for many editions. I am talking forever. Until 8th edition, really. The standard Imperial Guard infantry squad loadout was Autocannon grenade launcher. If you went on any internet forums, and you were trying to collect Imperial Guard, people would just tell you, just buy Autocannon grenade launchers. It's cheap, it's cheerful, it puts out Dakar. What more do you want? In 8th edition, I no longer think that stands true. I think the standard go-to weapon options for infantry squads are plasma heavy bolter. That's for 8th edition. But we're not here to talk about those weapons, we're here to talk about the autocannon. Now, the autocannon is on the fence between being a budget weapon system and a elite weapon system. What do I mean by that? Budget is something that's cheap, cheerful, sling some rounds down range. You don't expect a huge amount from it, but chips away the odd wound throughout the battle. And an elite weapon system is one that you pay a lot of points for, but if it hits the enemy, it will hurt them. The autocannon is on the fence because it is neither very cheap nor is it very expensive. It neither does a huge amount of damage, but neither does it do no damage. What it is the autocannon costs 12 points. Now, it used to cost 15 points in the index, but it's gone down to 12 points now. Really, I think it should be a 10-point weapon. Really, in the hands of a guardsman, it should be a 10-point weapon. That's what it's always been. But it's a 12-point weapon, and I think that just about sneaks it into being viable. At 15 points, wasn't worth it. Waste time. Don't bother. You could take 2 heavy bolters. Now, you can take, now it's worth it. Now, for your 12-point investment, what you're getting is a heavy 2, 48-inch range weapon, which is strength 7, AP -1, 2 damage. Now, the reason the autocannon, I figured this out, the reason the autocannon is 12 points, because the autocannon and the heavy bolter always used to be the same. And the trade-off was you got more shots from the heavy bolter that were weaker, and the autocannon you got less shots that were stronger. The reason it's changed is Games Workshop puts a really, really high points price on multiple damage weapons, especially ones that have got a fixed damage value. And as the autocannon does 2 damage, that's why it costs so much more. Games Workshop has a big, big thing about making multiple damage weapons cost a lot of points, especially ones that got a fixed damage rating. Now, that sounds like quite a good weapon. Strength 48-inch range means you can hit pretty much anywhere. Strength 7 means you'll be damaging a lot of targets pretty easily. AP -1 is a little bit the kicker. AP-1 just isn't really enough. And the 2 damage is nice though. Now the problem with the autocannon, and I want to caveat this quickly, is I think the autocannon is a fine weapon system. I think if autocannons are good. They are good, but they're not great. The problem with the autocannon is it's a jack of all trades, master of none. And it also doesn't take advantage. It's sort of a weapon of editions gone by. It doesn't take advantage of the wounding system in 8th edition. You see, back in the day, you took the autocannon because it would consistently wound infantry on 2s. That's why, even in my go big or go home lists of 7th edition, I still found place for a platoon of autocannons, because regularly you would be wounding pretty much any infantry on 2s. But now in 8th edition it's changed. The problem is the majority of infantry you guys are going to face, or we're all going to face I should say, are MEQ. That stands for Marine Equivalent. And the problem with that is that they're toughness 4. And in 8th edition, that means the autocannon is wounding on 3s, not 2s. And that's a big problem. It's a bigger problem than you would expect, because you just means that a third of the damage that you're going to do is just going to be lost out. And a lot of the time, the way cover works has changed as well. You see, back in the day, you were perfectly happy to shoot these things at Marines, whether they were in cover or not, because Marines would get their regular 3-up armor save against them. They didn't really care. But now, Marines in cover, they wouldn't really care about. Marines in cover get a 2+ armor save. Now, this thing just brings them back down to a 3-up, which isn't great. It means you kind of negate their cover, I guess, but it's just not as good, I guess it doesn't make a huge difference, but it just feels it can't punch through cover like a las cannon can, and it doesn't have the number of shots that a heavy bolter does to blast through cover that way. It just doesn't have the damage output. Now the damage too is interesting as well, because against a lot of infantry, the damage 2 won't matter, because most infantry will be 1 wound. Now the thing is that means, and I've tried autocannons a lot, it means the autocannon, you kind of want to be shooting at elite infantry, because 2 damage means if it's a Terminator, for example, they fail that wound, that it'll go straight through, and it'll kill them. Problem is, again, is the fact it's only AP -1. Most elite infantry will be rocking a 2-up save. That's why it's elite infantry. Most elite infantry is Terminator equivalent, it just is. And the problem is that they'll be getting if they're in cover, that's a 2-up save. AP -1 versus cover. So that means you've got a very little chance of getting the autocannon wound through. Now, if they are elites out in cover, that means they're going to get a 3-up save. So it has almost like a really niche role, the autocannon. It's really good at killing elite infantry that's out of cover. It's a very niche, specific thing. Now, against vehicles, what the autocannon is actually good at is not anti-infantry. That's where I think the mistake a lot of guard players, including myself, has been making. It's no longer an anti-infantry weapon. It is an anti-light vehicle weapon. That is vehicles that are preferably toughness 6 or better, or below. Things like skimmers, or land speeders, skimmer transport, some flyers are only toughness 6, the Storm Talon. It's okay against rhinos, but because rhinos toughness 7, it often means that you've only got 50% chance of wounding it. Because what the autocannon is good at doing is that's where the 2 damage comes in. Because if let's take like a land speeder, for example, or any kind of skimmer, most of them are only going to have a 3 or 4+ save. Most of them have only got 6 wounds. So if you took a bunch of Cadian autocannons, for example, and let's say you take them in a heavy weapon squad, you get 6 shots, you hit with half, re-roll, get 4 hits, probably get 3 wounds, might even get more. There's a good, you've got a 50-50 chance of just knocking that skimmer out of the sky. You can shoot them at flyers as well. They're quite good at knocking down flyers. And against rhinos, rhinos and razorbacks, razorbacks with twin assault cannons are still all the range, even with all the rage, I'm not sure what it is. They're still very popular. Just because, even with there being 44 points for a twin assault cannon, it's still an amazing weapon system. They're pretty good at dealing with that. If you can spam autocannons and be Cadian for days, you probably do really, really well. But against heavy vehicles, this is the interesting thing. Against heavy vehicles, you probably want an autocannon. You probably want a heavy bolter, because heavy bolter strength 5, which means it's going to wound any vehicle on a 5-up, and an autocannon shooting at any heavy vehicle wounding on a 5-up. So, point for point, you probably still want the heavy bolter because it's 8 points, and that's what you've got to ask yourself. Is there anything that the autocannon can do better than the heavy bolter? Against the majority of targets, infantry, vehicles of most kinds, heavy bolter will do better. It's just if you face a lot of light transports, orcs, if you face a lot of orcs, then autocannons are good. Now there's one other thing that autocannons are very good at killing this edition. Okay? Monstrous creatures. You see, most monstrous creatures are toughness 6, and the heaviest ones are toughness 7. You won't come across a toughness 8 monstrous creature, or very rarely. I'm sure that people are typing on their keyboards now saying that there are some. Yes, there are, but the majority of monstrous creatures that you will fight against will be toughness 6, toughness 7. And the majority of monstrous creatures that you fight against will only have a 3+ save. So autocannons are actually surprisingly good at killing them. I'm pretty sure Carnifexes are like toughness 6. Could be wrong. But I'm pretty sure the Carnifex is toughness 6, for example. And that means, it's only, you've got 3s to wound it, and it's only going to get a 4-up save. And if it fails it, that's 2 damage. So, yeah. Autocannons have got a niche role of killing light transports and monstrous creatures. So really, if you face a lot of orcs, or you face a lot of nids, get yourself some autocannons. Now, this video's gone on a bit longer than I wanted to already, so we're going to try and wrap it up now. Where do you want to take autocannons? Well, surprisingly, you want to take them in... You don't really want to be taking them in basic infantry squads. You can do. They're okay, but they're kind of expensive to be putting on a ballistic skill 4+ model. You want to be taking them in heavy weapon squads, or weapon squads which have ballistic skill 3+. The reason for that is taking them in heavy weapon squads means that they're still relatively cheap. It's 36 plus 18 points. 54 points, I believe. Hopefully my maths hasn't let me down there. 54 points for 6 autocannon shots. That's pretty good. If you're taking them, again, Cadian is the most competitive regiment, so that's why I often refer to them in these videos. You take a Cadian, if you go Cadian to your regiment trait, take 2 of these squads, put a company commander with them. That is 12 autocannon shots. If you're getting the right orders, all re-rolling hits, that is a significant DACA fire base. And if the enemy turns around and kills them, you've lost about 100 points worth of models. Big deal. So autocannon heavy weapon squads are quite nice if you can use them properly. Basic infantry squads, they're okay, but you might as well go with the heavy bolter. Now you kind of want to put them in command squads, because it'll allow they hit on a 3+, which is good, and it will mean that they're cheap enough that the enemy swats the command squad away, you're not that bothered. But they don't do a huge amount of damage, so they won't be drawing a lot of attention towards your command squads, but will allow them to contribute to the game pretty well. You could also take them in veteran squads. Now, veteran squads, I used to love running plasma vets with a las cannon on foot. That is still very powerful, but it's also very expensive. So, and with the way that sort of plasma and grenade launchers and all those sort of points changes have come about, and I haven't tried this, by the way, this is theory craft, but there's definitely theory, you know, definitely hypothetically, theoretically, there's a good possibility of taking veterans with grenade launchers and autocannons to keep them cheap. That's a lot of strength 6, strength 7, AP -1 DACA going into the enemy. That's a lot of firepower there for a reasonable points. That's 72 points plus 15 for the grenade launchers. 87 points gets you a very, you know, interesting unit. Now, like I said, I haven't tried that, but on paper, that looks powerful. Okay. On the flip side, you know, if you want to run plasma in your veteran squads, but you know the way you can keep it cheap is by sticking an autocannon in there. Plasma autocannon squads are pretty good. It's all strength 7. If you don't overcharge, it's all strength 7 shots, which means they're all good at shooting roughly the same targets. It's not bad. I've used plasma autocannons in other areas and other configurations, just not on veteran units, and it's done all right. I have to say, it's done all right, and I've used that in several editions, and it's done okay. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Leave lots of comments, tell me what you think, and of course, I'll see you guys next time.